India, a vibrant tapestry of culture and traditions, is renowned as being the land of temples. Among its many sacred sites, the Kamakhya temple in Assam stands as a testament to the country's rich cultural heritage. Situated on top of the Nilgiri hills in Assam, Kamakhya is regarded as a very powerful deity revered for her fertility and life giving attributes. The temple's unique architecture and mystical aura have long since made it a very popular abode for tantric devotees, worshippers, and historians worldwide. In today's video, let us understand 33 very interesting folktales and facts connected with Kamakhya Devi of Kamakhya Temple in Guwahati, Assam. The story of Kamakhya Devi starts in the court of Daksha, where Sati Devi, the daughter of Daksha, self immolated herself on not being able to bear the insult of her husband Shiva, not invited to the holy gathering. Seeing her lifeless body made Shiva wild with grief, and he decided to do a Tandav dance that Vishnu knew would end the world if not stopped in time. He took his Sudarshana Chakra and cut the body of Sati Devi into 51 pieces to stop Shiva from dancing any further. The places where the 51 body parts fell are commonly called as the Shakti Pithas today. And there was a place where her womb fell. The story would have gone into obscurity because for a lot of years nobody could find the place until one day Kamdev was cursed by Shiva. Now the gods had sent Kamdev to get Shiva out of his meditation, because of which Kamdev shot his bamboo arrow made of flowers. The Yoni Tantra fell in a place called Pragajyotisha or Pragajyotishipura and faded into oblivion until Kamdev started to find it. Now the story goes that Kamdev was sent by the gods to shake Shiva out of his meditation. While he was successful in putting him out of his meditation, that angered Shiva and opened his third eye, after which he cursed Kamadeva and he lost his beauty. In order to regain his beauty, Shiva advised him to search for the Yoni Tantra and worship it, only after which he would get his beauty and his virility back. It took Kamdev a lot of time to worship Shiva or worship the Yoni Tantra associated with Shiva and get back his beauty, but he was successful in doing so. After which he established a temple there that came to be known as the Kamakhya Devi, or the deity worshipped by Kamdev, and the area or the place came to be known as Kamapura, or the place where Kamadev worshipped. That place is modern day Assam, and Kamakhya Devi was worshipped on the Nilgiri hills of Guwahati in Assam. Legend has it that Brahma, after creating the universe, became vain and arrogant, prompting Sanatan Kali to teach him a lesson. She created the demon Kesi and sent it to kill Brahma. Brahma learnt his lesson and approached Kamakhya Devi for help, who was successful in slaying the demon. In return, she requested Brahma to build a temple on top of Keshi's corpse and allow cattle to graze on the hill. The sins of Brahma would absolve depending on whether cattle choose to graze on the hill. The hill came to be known as Nilachal Parvata, and the temple in due course came to be regarded as a divine seat of feminine power and respecting the traditions of femininity or feminine deities. We have to understand that in tantric tradition, the body of sati defines holiness. The bodily parts of sati are ritualized in tantric vidhis and reinforced by the inclusion of religious ceremonies and structures. What is very unique about Kamakhya temple is the absence of any particular idol of the goddess. What represents Kamakhya Devi is a yoni shaped stone that is worshipped as a manifestation of her presence. When you go to Kamakhya temple, what you will observe is a yoni shaped stone that is present in the Garvagriha of the temple, and that is always kept moist by a natural spring. While the yoni is definitely an interesting feature related to the temple, even more interesting that a lot of people don't know about is the story about the staircases associated with the temple. The Kalika Purana states that there were originally four paths to the temple: the Bagradwara, the Hanumantadwara, the Swargadwara, and the Singhadwara, built by Narkasura. Narkasura was the ruler of Kamarupa and at one time an ardent devotee of the deity. In due course, when he became, he wanted to marry the Devi and proposition to the Devi Kamakhya, after which she told him that he had to build a staircase to the temple from the hill or from the bottom of the hill to the temple in one night, only after which she would marry him. Narkasura set about doing his job with full ardor, and the Devi realized that she had to do something. She caught hold of a cock and she strangled its neck in order to make it caw in the middle of the night. The cawing of the cock made Narkasura think that it was actually going to be daytime, after which he left an incomplete staircase that still stands to date and which is called the Mekhala Patha or incomplete staircase related to Kamakhya temple. Currently, there are three gates to the temple. The north gate, that is called the Shakti Samruddhi Dwara. The east gate, that is the Moksha Dwara. And the Annapurna Dwara, where food is offered to the deity. We have to understand that Narkasura resided a long time back, after which the literature about the temple and its upkeep is subsequently lost to literature. What we do know is it was the Ahoms and the Koch kings that played a significant part in restoring the temple, and that's where the next legend comes about Kamakhya Devi and her divine powers. While stories about its construction, damage, and repair are very unclear, what is actually known or what we have records is that it was actually the Koch king Vishwasingha who was finally able to restore it. It is said that once during a fight with the Ahoms, Vishwasingha and his brother Chilarai had gone on top the Nilgiri hills where they met an old woman. The old woman showed them the ruins of the temple and instructed them that if they would take the blessings of the deity, then they would be successful in whatever prayers they had wished for in their lives. Vishwasingha was extremely interested and he did offer his prayers, and he assured the old lady that if his prayers came true, then he would definitely build a temple. While he was successful in subjugating the Ahoms at that time, when he started constructing the temple, the main portion or the upper portion fell through. And no matter how much he tried, he could not build it. The old lady again came to him in a dream and told him that he had actually told her that he would be building the temple with gold bricks, but he was using clay bricks, because of which they were falling apart. He did remember that he had said something like that, and then the craftsmen were instructed to mix a little bit of gold with each brick and start constructing the temple. What we also know is the temple was constructed midway before he left for another war, and it was his son that was successful in completing it, because when he went to the war, sometime between that period, the temple was destroyed by Kolapahada, the same person who destroyed the temples of Puri and Konark in Odisha. If stories are to be believed, Kala Pahado was a major general in the army of the Nawab of Bengal, Suleiman Karnani, and this Nawab had a daughter, Dulari, whom Kala Pahado fell in love with and wanted to marry. He had to convert into Islam in order to marry the girl, and after that, he wanted to reconvert, but he was forbidden from doing so by the Brahmin priests that angered him. Furthermore, they insulted him and did not allow him to enter the temples anymore. That made him seek his revenge by destroying the temples in a lot of places in India. Kola Pahado is the one behind destroying the temples of Puri and Konark, after which he destroyed the temple of Kamakhya Devi in Guwahati, Assam. What we do know is Kola Pahado was subsequently destroyed by some say his own army and some say his the goddess Sambaleshwari. And what we also know is while Bishwasingha was unable to complete the temple, it was actually his son Narasingha that completed the temple somewhere in the late 14th century. And then again, the story of Kamakhya Devi to Odisha or Sri Jagannath is just not limited with the connection of Kadapahada. There is one more very interesting story to it. So the story goes that once Ma Kamakhya Devi was seized with a very strong desire to visit Sri Khetra. Disguising herself as a middle-aged woman, she set off for her journey. Some miles away from the temple, she was accosted by a tantric sadhika called Nitya Dhobani, who misunderstood her aura to be an impure one and did not let her go any further. Ma came to her original avatar, and seeing that, or when she recognized the mother, Nite Dhomani was very much embarrassed and in deep sorrow for what she had done. She apologized to the mother and she begged for forgiveness. She asked her to stay in that place and not go anywhere. The place where Nite Dhomani worshipped the mother, there stands a temple today called Kamarupa Kali. And in that form, the mother is worshipped in Odisha. And not just in Odisha. Kamakhya temple is also found in Unnao district in Himachal Pradesh, where 800 years ago she was brought over by the Raj Purohits. It is said that during the Mongol invasion, the Purohits decided to shift the temple to prevent the deity from being destroyed. While en route, they chanced upon Himachal Pradesh and they sanctified the mother on the grounds, leading to emergence of a temple in that area, which is now considered a very important Shakti Peeth. Himachal Pradesh houses at least three Kamakhya temples that are known for their various melas and a lot of devotees that worship them early. But the oldest Kamakhya temple is that in Guwahati, Assam, that is considered a very prominent Tantric Shakti Peeth. Currently, the main temple of the goddess is situated 525 feet up the Nilgiri hills. It has two major sections. The easterly part that houses the Garbhagriha containing the main deity and the Mahavidya Sorashi, Kamala and Matangi. To the west of the main section is the Nata Mandira. On the Nilachal hill, in random places, are numerous Shiva mandiras and one temple dedicated to Vishnu. The seven Mahavidyas are situated on different parts of the Nilgiri hills. Other than the seven Mahavidyas, deities like Banadurga, Jayadurga, and Latikanta are also worshipped on top of the Nilgiri hills. The various form of Shiva temples that are present are the Tarakeshwara, the Kameshwara, the Siddheshwara, and the Kedareshwara. The Bhuvaneshwari temple lies on top of the Nilgiri hills. So we have to understand that since ancient times, Kamarupa was the center for Sakta cult that in turn accepted tantric practices or tantrism into its vidhis. Tantricism, as the whole world knows, is not all about black magic, but it is just a route to enlightenment. The transgressive practices that the people adopt en route to enlightenment are what give it a bad name or give it its infamy. Tantricism is all about activating or enlightening your chakras from the Sahasra chakras to the Mooladharas. And in the process of obtaining enlightenment, the forms of worship that people do or the processes that they adopt sometimes may appear a little strange to people not accustomed to it. What remains is, or what we have to understand is, for Shakticism or for Tantricism, the Kamakhya temple is the most important place of worship because this is where the yoni of the goddess is worshipped. When we talk about Puranas or when we have to understand the origins of Kamakhya Devi, the oldest Puranas or the Mahapuranas that were called refer to the goddess as Mahamaya. They did not contain any mention of Kamakhya Devi. Kamakhya Devi is written about or mentioned in the Uppa Puranas like the Kalika Puranas, which were written somewhere in the 10th to 12th century CE in Sanskrit, where they have explicitly mentioned the mother to be a branch of the Mahamaya or a form of the Mahamaya goddess, an illusion who can make people go into war, an illusion who can bring joy into your lives, and an illusion who can even destroy her enemies or destroy anyone not following the paths of dharma or if she is provoked. That is where the concept of the goddess comes, and that is where the concept of Shakticism and Tantricism to worship the deity have evolved from. According to Kalika Purana, Ma Kamakhya is an illusionary goddess or an illusionary deity who has a lot of aspects. She can be benevolent, she can be mild, and she can be an extremely energized and versatile character. She can also represent ferociousness when or while destroying the enemies. She can represent the goddess of war who drives her enemies into war and destroys them. And she can also be referred to an extremely angry goddess who, if provoked, can reduce you to ashes. That, in concern with the goddess, has people worshipping her two aspects. Kamakhya is also concerned with Shakticism, where people worship her in the right handed method, or where she is offered flowers and clothes. She is also mentioned, or she's also worshipped in the left handed method, or the Vamacharya method, where people offer her sacrifices, or most importantly, she's offered sacrificial things as a form of worship to her. Kamakhya Devi is among the very few goddesses, or you can also say she's among the only goddess that accepts both the Vamacharya as well the Dakshinacharya. Vamacharya, or the left-handed worship, and Dakshinacharya, or the right-handed worship, and that is what people offer her. She is offered both flowers and clothes. She is also offered sacrifices. The sacrifices that mother is offered are limited to male. Care is taken to explicitly offer male sacrifices to the goddess. But this is a rule that is sometimes exempted when there are mass sacrifices going on, like in cases of the Ambuchi Mela. That is again a very interesting thing that we should know about. The Ambubachi Mela occurs yearly in the month of Ashad as per the Assamese and Bengali calendar, and in the month of late June, somewhere in the 21st or 22nd of June as per the English calendar. During this time, the mother enters her annual menstruation phase, and for 3 days the Garbhagriha remain closed. Devotees do not, or they are required to refrain from activities like farming, taking bath, and even worshipping during this period. For 3 days, the stream that moistens the yoni, or the stream, the natural stream that is present around the yoni or the rock fissure, turns red. Not just that, the river Brahmaputra also turns red during this period, and nobody has to, or nobody has any plausible explanation as to why this happens. Some people say that it is because of the high iron content in the soil, and some people say that it is because of the Purohits or the Gosais mixing or diluting the rivers with rich vermilion. The fact remains that during this period, the water turns red, which is celebrated as a period of fertility. The mother goes into annual menstruation phase for 3 days when the Garbhagriha remains closed. On the fourth day, the doors open and devotees are offered prasad in the form of Angodak, that is water from the spring, and Angavastra, that is the cloth, pieces of cloth that cover the fissure or the yoni during her menstruation phase. She is the only goddess that celebrates menstruation, which is otherwise regarded as a taboo in Hindu society. And that kind of explains, or that explains her fertility or her role as goddess of fertility in the region. Other than the Ambubachi festival, Kumari Puja is an important aspect of Kamakhya temple that is held during the time of Dashera every year. Legend states that there was once a demon called Kolasura who had rained terror on heavens and earth. The people appealed to goddess Kali for help, who took the form of a maiden and destroyed the demon. From that day onwards, Kumaris or virgins are worshipped as Kamakhya Devi during the time of Dashera every year, in order to proclaim the power of the goddess and bring the people joy, abundance, and prosperity into their lives. It is said that Kumari Puja is a form of removing obstacles from your life and getting it, or bringing happiness into your lives. People also say that it is a form of Shakti cult, or it is a form of Shaktiism, in order to celebrate the power of the goddess over earth. The Puranas state that Mahamaya is the ultimate form or universal form of the goddess that is worshipped in different forms, sometimes in the form of Kamakhya, sometimes in the form of Durga, sometimes in the form of Kali, sometimes in the form of Lakshmi. The Kalika Purana states that Kamakhya is an amalgamation of Durga, Lakshmi, Kali, and sometimes she is worshipped as the goddess of fertility that can bring abundance and fertility into the world. While In temples, she is represented in as a yoni or as a stone that does not have any definite form or that does not have any definite features. But iconically, she is represented as a very beautiful damsel coming out from the navel of Lord Shiva, who has a number of arms. Iconographically, Kamakhya is represented as having 6 heads and 12 arms, who is omnipresent, omnipotent, and who is represented in a red sari, having or wearing opulent jewelry and holding a hibiscus flower. She is seated on a lotus. She holds, among other things, a lotus, a bell, a discus, a club, a goad, and a shield. Her remaining 2 hands hold a bowl that is either made of skull or any other material. Historians state that Ma Kamakhya was originally worshipped by the Garo and Khasi tribes before being sanctified by Hindu and Tantric rituals. Tantric rituals refer to her as having 6 faces, 12 arms, and 18 eyes, with each face pointing towards different direction and having a different color. The white face represents Ma Maheshwari, the red face represents Ma Kamakhya, the yellow face represents Ma Tripura, the green face represents Ma Sharada, the black face represents Ma Kameshwari, and Ma Chanda has a face of a mixed color. The 6 right hands of Ma Kamakhya hold a book, a sacred cord, 5 arrows, a sword, a spear, and a trident. With her 6 left hands, she holds a rosary, a lotus, a sugarcane, a chauri, a pinakabo, and displays Abhaya Mudra. She has Naikas and Yoginis that are considered as her attendants that are worshipped alongside with her. There are also 10 Mahavidyas that are worshipped alongside with her and have temples in the same premises as her. Let us understand the 10 Mahavidyas one by one. The first Mahavidya is that of Kali, who has a wrathful expression, 4 arms, disheveled hair, and who wears a sword in one hand and a just severed head in her other hand. The second Mahavidya is that of Tara, who is also called the Buddhist pantheon of Ma Kamakhya. The third Mahavidya is called Sodasi, who is also called Sri Vidya. The fourth Mahavidya is called Bhuvaneshwari. The fifth Mahavidya is referred to as Vairavi, who is also called Siddhi Vairavi, Tripura Vairavi, among other names. The sixth Mahavidya is that of Chinnamashta, who is also called Prakanda Chandika. The seventh Mahavidya is called Dhumavati. The eighth Mahavidya is that of Ma Bagala or Bagalamukhi, as she is commonly called. The ninth Mahavidya is that of Matangi, who is also called Sumukhi, Raja Matangi, among other names. The 10th Mahavidya is that of Kamala, who is referred to or identical with goddess Lakshmi of the Hindu scriptures. An important aspect of Kamakhya Devi and deity is the Kamakhya mantra and tantra, about which we need to have a brief idea of when we are discussing about her. So knowledge exists in the form of Nada called Shiva, which when reaching the ground is called Sadashiva. Tantra is regarded as comprising of 5 streams and is divided into 5 different branches. The Kamikagama Tantra says that the 5 streams of tantras are issued from each mouth of Sadashiva and thus divided into 5 into 5 or 25 streams. The Kamakhya Tantra is devoted to goddess Kamakhya and her glorification. It contains approximately 445 couplets and has 10 patalas or chapters with instructions on how to worship her. For example, the first patala is about a conversation between Shiva and Parvati, with Parvati expressing her desire to know about the best tantra. The second patala is called Mantrodhara, which contains a very powerful mantra for knowledge and power. The third patala is about the ritual procedure of worshipping goddess Kamakhya and so on. If you want to know more about the patalas, please message me so we can devote a next video to the complete patalas. What we do know is the Mahabhagavata instructs the worshipper to use mantras, yantras, tantras, and preparatory rituals that are of tantric origin to worship the Mahavidyas, And it also instructs a worshipper to use shrotas, pujas, and homers to worship them that do not have a specific tantric origin. The Mahabhagavata further warns that the procedure to worship the Mahavidyas should never be made public or there will be misfortune and loss of siddhi. Despite the similarities in the Yogini Tantra and the Kalika Purana that are the chief Upapuranas regarding the identity and the tantric vidhis associated with the worship of Ma Kamakhya, there are subtle differences in the wordings used in the text. For example, the Kalika Purana states that it is Mahamaya, the creator of the universe, who exists in Kamarupa as Kamakhya. The Yogini Tantra, on the other hand, states that it is Ma Kali, the supreme deity of the universe, who exists as Ma Kamakhya or who is an incarnation of Ma Kamakhya. The Kalika Purana states that Kamakhya, Lakshmi, Mahamaya, and Saraswati are the same and they exist in the heart of Lord Vishnu. The Yogini Tantra states that it is actually the Kalika form or the Kali form of the deity that exists as Kamakhya, and she is worshipped. Unlike other goddesses, she is worshipped as both Vamacharya, as the left-handed method, and the Dakshinacharya or the right-handed method. Traditional goddesses, as mentioned in all the other texts and Puranas, are worshipped in the Dakshinacharya form of method. That is, they are offered flowers, clothes, and other things. The Tantric Vidhi goddesses are worshipped in the form of Vamacharya or left-handed form of worship where they are offered sacrifices. Ma Kamakhya is the only goddess who is worshipped as both in both Dakshinacharya and Vamacharya method. That is, devotees offer her both flowers, clothes, and sacrifices. Even more interesting is Devi Kamakhya's association with Buddhism and the similarities along with the differences that exist in the Buddhist belief associated with the deity of the goddess. Now, both Buddhism and Hinduism are influenced by Tantra. In Kamakhya temple, we observe several Buddhist signs like the lion gate and the Tantric Ganesha that are very different from traditional temple designs. Lions were not native to Assam. They were installed by the Pala kings who were ardent Buddhist devotees, and the lion is a symbol of royalty and leadership in Buddhist rituals. Buddhists have been known to worship the Ugratara form of Ma Kamakhya as Devi Ekajata. Where do the differences come in? The differences come in the concept of nirvana that is followed by both religions. The Buddhist nirvana states that you can obtain liberation by extinguishing the three fires, that is, of moha, dvesha, and raga, by following Buddhist beliefs. The Kamakhya Tantra or Tantric rituals state that in order to obtain moksha or relief, you have to go through the act of sadhana and you have to practice bhakti to the goddess. Keeping in mind the vast amount of literary and scriptural evidence, it can be safe to conclude that Goddess Kamakhya is the most dominant name in the early history of Assam or Kamarupa, and it was under her banner that the first empire in early Assam was established. It was over her emergence and recognition as the presiding deity of the state that the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites went into silent conflict and the ruler of Kamrupa or Narkasur lost his life. The fear of the goddess is such that the Koch kings who once built her empire ultimately were cursed in such a manner that even today they bow their heads and do not look at the temple in direct eyesight. Now, if folklore is to be believed, it was actually the kings Bishwasingha and his son Naranarayana who had built the temple. But the Koch kings also received a god curse from the goddess, because of which to till this date they keep their heads down when passing by. Some of the descendants, namely two kings Malladeva and Sukhadeva, knew that the goddess was in the habit of dancing during her evening prayers. So they bribed the priest Kendukalai to have a secret glimpse into the chamber when she was dancing. The goddess knew about it, and this angered her so much that she cursed them to stay away from the temple, or they would be cursed with infertility and their dynasty would be out because of no heirs. Till this date, The coach kings do not interfere with the functioning of the temple and they keep their heads down when passing it. Not just the coach kings, but even the Ahoms and the Mughals were in awe of the deity. It is said that the Mughal king Aurangzeb wanted to attack the temple twice, but twice his attempts were failed. Once because his army of 1000 men disappeared in the forest leading to the temple, and the second time because nobody from his army dared challenge the goddess or dared to come with him to break the temple down or to loot it. The fear of the tantric vidhis associated with the goddess was such that even the Mughals stayed away from it. Even though the Ahoms were in awe of the temple, it was actually their interference that saved it. It is said that after the withdrawal of the Koch kings, the temple lay neglected for several years until the Ahom kings decided to intervene. Ahom king Rudra Singha summoned Krishnaram Bhattacharya, a Mahant from Nadia district in Bengal, to come and care from the temple. After Rudra Singha died, his son Shiva Singha gave the management of the temple and dedicated several lands to Mahant Krishnaram Bhattacharya so that he could keep on taking care of the temple. The Mahant and his successors came to be known as Parvatiya Gosais, or the Gosais or the priest who prayed or stayed on top of the hill. Till date, many of the Kamakhya priests are disciples or descendants of the Parvatiya Gosais. Other than the chief presiding deity or Devi Kamakhya, these Parvatiya Gosais or the temple priests also worship three forms of Vishnu present in the temple, chiefly the Kedara Kamaleshwara, which is present near the northern side of the temple, the Gadadhara, which is present in the northwest side of the temple, and the Pandunath temple that is present in the eastern part. The Ashtashaktis or the eight incarnations of Ma Kamakhya are also worshipped by the Parvatiya Gosais. The eight Mahashaktis of Ma Kamakhya are Guptakama, Shri Kama, Vindhyasivasini, Kotishwari, Vanadurga, Padadurga, Dirgheshwari, and Bhuvaneshwari. Other than the Vishnu forms and the Mahavidyas, Kamakhya temple is also known for its wide variety of beautiful Shiva images adorning the outer walls of the temple. The Agamas state that around 25 Leela Murtis of Shiva can be found both in 4 arms and in 8 arms, carrying different items and in different mudras. The eight-armed Bhairava, as observed on the outer walls of the Kamakhya temple, carries, among other things, a Khatvanga, a Pasa, a Sula, a Damaru, a Kapala, and a snake. One hand carries a piece of flesh and the other hand is an Abhay Mudra. The four-armed Bhairava adorned on the outside walls of the Garbhagriha of Ma Kamakhya temple holds, among other things, a Parasu on the upper right hand and a pot on the upper left hand. The lower right hand rests freely on the waist in Katihasta Mudra and the lower left hand performs the Varada Mudra. Another form of Bhairava that has been found carries or has been identified carrying a Trishula in one hand and a Khatvanga in the upper right hand. The lower right hand carries or is in Katihasta Mudra and the other hand is in Jnana Mudra. The Kankala Murti form of Bhairava that is found on the Kamakhya walls is that of Bhairava carrying a skeleton in one hand and a Trishula in other hand. The Vinanadhara Dakshina Murti or Shiva holding a Veena in one hand and the Vishnagarha Murti that is Shiva holding the emblem of Vishnu, Chakra, Gada, Varada and Mudra are other unique forms of Shiva Murtis adorned on the walls of the temple. There are two images of Brahma and one image of Surya as well adorned on the walls of the Kamakhya temple. Brahma, or the first image of Brahma, is seen holding a Srik and a Srubha. His two hands are in Katihasta Mudra and Varada Mudra. The other image of Brahma is heavily ornamented and it shows him holding a Srik and a Srubha in two hands while his two hands are in Varada Mudra. The image of Indra, as observed in Kamakhya temple, stands on a lotus pedestal. His two upper hands hold two fully blown lotuses, while the other two hands are in Jnana Mudra and in Katihasta Mudras. While the 10 Mahavidyas are worshipped with equal fervor in Kamakhya temple, it is actually Devi Kamakhya who is considered the principal deity. According to the 77th chapter of the Mahabhagavata, called the Devi Purana, which was actually an Upa Purana written in the 7th or the 8th century CE. It is actually Devi Kamakhya who is considered the principal deity who stands in the center. To her left is Devi Tara, to her right is Devi Bhuvaneshwari, to her southeast is Devi Sodashi, to her southwest is Devi Bhairavi, to the northwest is Devi Chinnamasta. Baglamukhi lies just behind the deity. To her northeast is Devi Sundari, and to the south lies Devi Dhumavati. This arrangement of the Mahavidyas, as mentioned in the 77th chapter of the Mahabhagavata, is not consistent with the actual placement of the Mahavidyas on top of Nilachal Hill. Yet, the text insists that there is some connection between the position mentioned in the text and their actual placement in the original temple that was built by Kamdev on his beauty being restored by the deity. Till date, historians have not been able to put a time stop to how old the Kamakhya actually is. Ancient brick samples collected from two different strata of the temple have shown one part to be constructed in 800 AD while one part to be constructed in 500 AD. Radiocarbon datings of the bottom layer of the temple have shown it to be around 2200 years old, with the second bottom layer being around 1500 years old. What exactly caused the temple to be ruined or what caused the outer layer to break is something that we will never understand properly. Some say that the temple is situated in a seismic zone and it was an earthquake that ruined it and the ruler subsequently rebuilt or restructured it. Some say that it was actually the invasion from the Mongols and the other invaders that caused it to break and be destroyed. But till date, we do not know what exactly is the complete ages of the temple, who was it that exactly built it, and who destroyed it. Ma Kamakhya remains an elusive deity. It is yet not clear as to who built her temple or when was her temple built. People regard her as an ambivalent goddess with one face being very kind and generous that blessed the Koch kings to success to war in their enemies. The other side shows her destructive nature when she curses the descendants of the Koch kings to go away or never fade come inside the temple again for daring to disturb her sanctity. The Mahavidyas of the Kamakhya temple are a force to be reckoned with. Worshipping them with the proper vidhis and worshipping them along with the required mantra, tantra, srotas and homas can give you wealth, health and prosperity. What we do know is the Mahabhagavata instructs the worshipper to use mantras, tantras, and yantras along with preparatory rituals to worship the Mahavidyas that are of tantric origin. It also instructs the worshippers to use shrutas, pujas, and homas to worship that do not have a specific tantric origin. The Mahabhagavata warns the worshipper to never make these hymns and shrotas and the worshipping with these public, or there will be misfortune and loss of siddhi.